I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about, because it's not
about
one
it right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be at the Defense Department.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years, but you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one. Let us just be clear.
Boom, put that in your peace pipe and smoke it. I'm serious. Why does Senator Warren always do this? Or she always seems to do this, right? She always seems to put herself in such obvious hypocritical situations. I mean, this is a woman who repeatedly lied. She blatantly lied about her supposed Native American ancestry, and then she used that lie to position herself as a woman of color. I kid you not, a woman of color on Harvard's law faculty. And then she arrogates herself to a position that judges others for even the possibility of exploiting the system for a future career advancement. I'm seriously, how do people like, I can't even, regardless, look, just, I mean, that is just a small sample of the way Pete Hegseth, our future Secretary of Defense, absolutely crushed the Democrats during this Senate hearing. But before we dive in here, gang, I got to give you all a huge shout out. Our monetization after a year is finally back up and running on YouTube. Our super chats, you will find, are back and better than ever. We are finally, after a full year of demonetization, and we never even really fully knew why, we are finally back, baby. I want to give a huge thanks to all of you who supported us and encouraged us and got us through a very rough past year. We literally could not have done it without you, and I cannot thank you enough, most especially to our Courageous Conservatives Club, where you guys supported us with a monthly fee every month. You kept us afloat. God bless you guys. I can't thank you enough. Speaking of rough, it was a tough, grueling hearing for sure for Pete Hegseth, I guess, as they should be, but Pete is a tough guy, and he absolutely ran rings around these Democrat clowns. Let me give you some highlights, what I was particularly attracted to today. Listen to what Pete said about ending DEI and restoring the integrity of our military. Check this out.
Our standards will be high and they will be equal, not equitable. That's a very different word. We need to make sure every warrior is fully qualified on their assigned weapon system, every pilot's fully qualified and current on the aircraft they are flying, and every general or flag officer is selected for leadership or promotion purely based on performance, readiness, and merit. Leaders at all levels will be held accountable, and warfighting and lethality and the readiness of the troops and their families will be our only focus.
And then when asked about how he's going to deal with the bloated bureaucracy at the Pentagon, I mean, bloated bureaucracy, to say the least, here was his brilliant answer.
What are you going to do about that?
Senator, we're going to address that. We won World War II with 7 four-star generals. Today, we have 44 four-star generals. There's an inverse relationship between the size of staffs and victory on the battlefield. We don't need more bureaucracy at the top. We need more warfighters empowered at the bottom. So it's going to be my job, working with those that we hire and those inside the administration, to identify those places where fat can be cut so it can go toward lethality.
Doge comes to the Department of Defense. I absolutely love it. Doge comes for the DOD. Let's move on to some of my favorite moments with the Democrats. Here's Pete smacking down the ultra-leftist Angus King from the state of Maine.
more restrictive, they took advantage of them, and it put our men and women in a more dangerous and difficult place.
And you believe
For
that
future wars we fight, we need to have someone atop the Pentagon, sir, who understands how those ripple effects
Well, I just want
impact
to
the men and women
understand
in
your
uniform.
position. Your position is torture's okay. Is that correct? Waterboarding, torture is no longer prohibited given the circumstances of whatever war we're in. Is that correct?
Senator, that is not what I said. I've never been party to torture. We are a country that fights by the rule of law, and our men and women always do. And yet we have too many people here in air-conditioned offices that like to point fingers at the guys in dark and dangerous places, the gals in helicopters in enemy territory who are doing things that people in Washington, D.C. would never dare to do, or send, in many cases.
In one of your interviews, you said they're willing to do this. You're talking about Donald Trump and Senator.
Yeah, here. I mean, air-conditioned offices. I love it. That's part of the debureaucratization of the Pentagon. Then you had Senator Peters of Michigan, who tried to trap Pete into a gotcha question, only to have it absolutely blow up in his face. Check this out.
I don't know of any corporate board of directors that would hire a CEO for a major company if they came and said, you know, I supervised 100 people before. They'd ask you, well, what kind of experiences you had? We need innovation. Can you give me an experience or your actual experience of driving innovation in an organization? Give me an example of where you have done that.
Oh my goodness, Senator, absolutely. At Concerned Veterans for America, we created the Fixing Veterans Healthcare Task Force, a bipartisan task force that never been done before, to create policy, to drive policy change on Capitol Hill that organizations fought ferociously against. We got the VA Accountability Act passed and the Mission Act passed in a way that a nonprofit of our size, veterans organization, has never done. And that's testified in all the letters that we put forward to the committee, which are on the record.
I have limited time. Thank you for that.
And remember, these are the senators that confirmed Biden's nominees, the single most unqualified and competent people on the planet. Well, then you had what many consider to be, frankly, the dumbest senator, Senator Hirono of Hawaii, which is too bad because my wife is Japanese, and I think Hirono is part Japanese, so my wife would be like, you can't say that. But regardless, she tried to grill Pete on a bunch of false anonymous rumors, and, well, here's how it turned out.
I've read multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC
Do you
News
know
that run
that
directly
drinking on the job
contradictory to the
is
dozens of men and women at
not
Fox News
contemplated
Channel
on it?
who I work with
I'm
who
not
came
hearing
on
the
the
answer to my
record
question.
and said they've
In your
never
opening
seen
statement,
that.
Mr. Hegseth, you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
Absolutely.
Talk about somebody who slurs their words. I mean, now perhaps one of the most jaw-dropping moments happened after Democrats like that started to make a big deal out of Pete's, supposed past moral failures. We saw some fire coming from Oklahoma Senator Mark Mullen, where he read the riot act to these hypocritical scumbags. Take a look at this. He did not hold back.
Or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye.
I love that plank eye. Plank eye. But I got to say, when all's said and done, my favorite moment is actually a little theologizing that came from Pete. He was asked to give an account for the tattoo he has on his chest of the Jerusalem cross, lovely Byzantine symbol. Listen to this dramatic testimony in terms of how how it relates to how so many soldiers were adversely affected under woke policies.
You'd mentioned that you were not able to serve with your National Guard unit in the protection of the inauguration of Joe Biden because of a tattoo, a Christian tattoo. Can you elaborate just a little bit on what is this very offensive, extremist, racist tattoo that you have?
It's a tattoo I have right here, Senator. It's called the Jerusalem Cross. It's a historic Christian symbol. In fact, interestingly, recently I attended briefly the memorial ceremony of former President Jimmy Carter on the floor of our National Cathedral. On the front page of his program was the very same Jerusalem Cross. It is a Christian religious symbol. And when the events happened before preceding the Biden inauguration, I was a part of the mobilization to defend that inauguration as someone who'd been a proud supporter of Donald Trump, but also a member of the military, had orders to come to Washington, D.C. to guard that inauguration. And at the last minute, those orders were revoked. I'd never had orders revoked before. I'd been on orders to a lot of places to do a lot of difficult and dangerous things. They were revoked, and I was not told why. Later, when I wrote my book, I was able to get information that was because I had been identified. Someone who'd served in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Guantanamo Bay, holding a riot shield outside the White House. I'd been identified as an extremist, as someone unworthy of guarding the inauguration of an incoming American president. And if that's happening to me, Senator, how many other men and women, how many other patriots, how many other people of conscience? We haven't even talked about COVID and the tens of thousands of service members who were kicked out because of an experimental vaccine. In President Trump's Defense Department, they will be apologized to. They will be reinstituted with pay and rank. Things like focusing on extremism, Senator, have created a climate inside our ranks that feel political when it hasn't ever been political. Those are the types of things that are going to change. And Senator Sullivan, you mentioned that study. After a whole study was held, extremism working group study, 100 extremists were identified in the ranks of 3 million. And most of those were gang related.
It's going to be an absolute honor to have Pete Hegseth as our Secretary of Defense. I don't think he's going to have any problem passing. I think certainly as we saw with Mike Johnson, the way when Trump gets on the phone, all the Republicans lined up in the House, I think we're going to see something comparable in the Senate as well. All in all, it's being widely noted throughout social media that the Democrats just generally came across as excessively rude, dismissive, argumentative, frankly unhinged. They were inauthentic. They were hypocritical, and obviously that's just not doing them any favors, especially in light of their colossal loss back in November. I would argue here, gang, bottom line, what these ultra-woke leftists are really scared to death of in terms of what Pete Hegseth really represents is the restoration of manhood, of classical manhood in our military. We've talked a lot about this of late. There's been a number of articles that have been written of late about this, just in general, this general phenomenon of sort of this reemergence, this mythopoetic reemergence of classical manhood. But I think Pete really is part of this growing trend among men, especially young men, rediscovering religious faith, and again, particularly traditionalist faith. They're not interested in the very effeminate, modern, contemporary, particularly Christian expressions of faith. They want to go back to a time of the Jerusalem cross. They want to go back to an ancient world where men were men, and the faith of that day forged a true sense of manhood. Now, this is technically known as a dynamic called remythologization. And it's fascinating because scholars have noted that we've seen this before, historically speaking. Scholars have noted that during times that are particularly disruptive where we're seeing epical changes in a civilization, inevitably new myths or forms of re-mythologization come to the surface. And this is because mythology, which is meta-narrative, is intrinsic to human consciousness. So the Swiss theorist Jean Gebser, he called it the mythical structure of human consciousness, which he sees as innate. In other words, a mythical conception of the world isn't just some evolutionary throwback that we can chuck now that we have science. That, ironically, would be a modernist myth, right? That would be a modernist meta-narrative. So the notion that science somehow represents the emancipation of the human person from superstitious traditions is itself a tradition. It is itself a superstition. It's a myth. When all is said and done, mythos, which the ancient Greeks called it, mythos, it constitutes stories, meta-narratives that reveal reality at its deepest, most meaningful level. And as Jordan Peterson has pointed out time and time again, the human mind, frankly, can't make sense of a radically complex world without some kind of mythological structure that creates a value hierarchy so that we can assemble and make sense of the world, very much like a puzzle. Mythology becomes the patterns upon which all the particulars of life are able to be arranged in a value structure so as to make life intelligible and sensible. So scholars such as Jean Gebser and Peterson, they all argue that that mythological structure of consciousness is still very much there in the modern mind at a foundational level, and that during periods of extraordinary change and civilizational disruption, inevitably a new wave of mythologization comes to the surface. And that's what a number of scholars are arguing is happening today, not just here in the United States, but in Europe as well, or actually, indeed, all throughout the world. We're seeing a Neo-Confucian China, or the rise of a Hindu nationalism in India, or Neo-Ottoman Turkey and the like, Neo-Orthodox Russia. We're seeing it literally everywhere, too. It's not just happening in religious, in the revitalization of religious traditions. We're seeing remythologization in video games. We're seeing it in Netflix series. We're seeing it in movies. We're seeing it in UFC fights. You know, that's basically our equivalent of a Roman Colosseum. The notion of classical manhood, of this remythologized hero, of kingship, of slaying dragons, really is organically all coming back in this very disruptive period as we move from a globalist age to a more civilizationalist age. And it's captivating the minds and the imaginations of young men. And that, I would argue, in the end, is precisely what Pete Hegseth represents, especially when you contrast him with Lloyd Austin of this outgoing administration. You know, it's not coincidental that Pete has been deeply immersed and involved in the recovery of classical education, particularly the rediscovery of the great books, you know, Homer and Hesiod. He wrote a whole book about this. Many people don't know that. Pete Hegseth wrote a whole book about the importance of recovering Homer, Hesiod, Plato. By the way, Plato was called Broad Shoulders. That was his nickname because he was so buffed. Aristotle, Augustine, Dante, J.R.R. Tolkien. Pete, like Trump, is all about restoring civilization, a restoration which is ultimately, I would argue, the single greatest enemy to woke progressivism. So I think Pete did a great job valiantly defending the restoration of that civilization at his Senate hearing today, and I cannot wait to call him our Secretary of Defense. Look out for each other on this channel. Your safety and your security are our #1 priority. So if you haven't secured the deed to your home as of yet, you need to click on that link below right now and protect yourself and your loved ones. I was absolutely shocked when I found out how easy it is to access the deed to my house, and not just access it, but actually change it. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. But the problem is that all our deeds are now online, and criminals are free to find your deed, forge your signature, refile as the new homeowner, take out tons of loans using your home's equity, and then they stick you with all the debt. But that's where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. Gang, they're simply amazing. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that the deed to your home is absolutely and completely protected 24/7. Click on that link below right now. Use promo code TurleyTalks. And all you got to do is enter your address for your no obligation home title scan to see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. It's a $100 value, absolutely totally free with my promo code TurleyTalks. Gang, don't wait for the worst to happen only to regret you didn't do something about it when you could have. Do what I've done. Do what countless patriots have done. Click on that link below right now and secure your home. Hey, gang, is a Bitcoin boom on the horizon? You may not have seen this, but we're now getting reports that among the flurry of executive orders that President Trump will be signing on day one of his presidency, he's expected to issue a number of EOs regarding cryptocurrency. This is amazing stuff. Now, according to a report from the Washington Post, among the executive orders that Trump is expected to deliver on day one include those addressing debanking and another one that repeals a cryptocurrency accounting policy that requires banks that hold digital assets to count them as liabilities on the institution's balance sheet. Now, as you know, Trump became a major proponent of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general during his 2024 campaign. In fact, back in May, he became the first major party candidate to accept cryptocurrency donations, which by the end of July netted him, if you could believe it, $4 million in cryptocurrency donations. Not a bad move on his part, huh? He, of course, delivered the keynote address at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville we all told you about, where he vowed to make the United States, and this is what he said, quote, I love this, the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world. I think Elon Musk has gotten to him, don't you think? So what should we expect in the first 100 days of his administration, particularly for Bitcoin? Are we going to see a price surge? And is now the time to finally take a dip into the Bitcoin waters if you haven't done so? Joining me today is Abdullah Nassif of Good Morning Crypto. This is a program that I love. This is a Twitter feed I follow each and every day. You'll definitely want to subscribe by clicking on the link below. Follow him on X as well. Abdullah, welcome. It's great to have you here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time now.
Thank you so much. And lucky for us, we get to celebrate the era of digital assets inside the United States today. And I'm going to be providing some evidence for your listeners. So thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
It's an honor to have you, Abdullah. So, yeah, I mean, 6 days to go, man. 6 days until the single most pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto administration comes to power. I'm curious, just as a fan, as a guy who eats, sleeps, and drinks this stuff, as a crypto enthusiast, what are you most excited about in the next, in what's to come?
You know, what's really interesting is that a lot of people have centered their attention on Bitcoin, but my belief, and I believe something that's unique about our channel, is we focus on the evolution of the financial system. So the next era for our financial system is on blockchains. And we're seeing the largest companies on the planet, whether it's BlackRock, JP Morgan, Fidelity, or Goldman Sachs, all four of those companies have become pro-crypto, and we're going to see a lot more of that in the first 2 quarters of 2025.
I love it. Absolutely love it. We talk about techno-populism all the time on this channel. The way the new technologies that are emerging are basically emancipating populations from the old industrialized structures. Even Web 2.0 is going its way. Web 3.0 is coming. You've got our first ever crypto czar, David Sachs. You've got Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. She's introducing a new bill in Congress. It's the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act. That would involve, I believe, the United States owning 1 million Bitcoin, which would be 5%, right, of all Bitcoin. From your vantage point, just practically speaking, can you flesh out the significance of that?
So here is what I'm talking about. The golden age of digital assets has already arrived. And we got there on November 5th with the election of Donald Trump. Something I'm sure you'd appreciate, Dr. Turley, is that on our channel, After that assassination attempt in July, we made a major shift to being pro-Donald Trump for several reasons. First of all, for his pro-crypto policies. But second of all, I'm an American, and I have the perception of America first. I was born and raised in this country, and that's something that I'd like to hold true. As a 27-year-old living in America, it seems like a lot of the opportunities for our generation are hyper suppressed. And you had a great conversation before we went on air about how our generation in particular is lacking trust in the traditional system. That is exactly where cryptocurrencies enter the conversation. And there's two major catalysts that Donald Trump has been very outspoken about. The first is what you've already mentioned with the National Bitcoin Reserve, which from my perspective opens the door for many of these other assets. But the second major catalyst for the industry could be tax-free for American crypto assets. We are talking about zero capital gains being paid. And not only has Donald Trump said this on several platforms, his son, Eric Trump, has doubled down at an event in Dubai, stating that this is something in the works right now.
I saw that. I saw that live, which was really, I think it was live, time difference, but yeah, I saw it on X, of course. That was a really, really neat conference. Were you there? Were you able to go to that?
I wish.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to make that our point next year in the age of crypto, which would be absolutely amazing. But no, I think you're so right. This is representing a coming of age, as it were, of a whole new cyberspace reality that's replacing the old industrialized structures that our government and our government's policies are still stuck in. But yeah, the idea of just like no taxing on investment in crypto. I mean, that'd be insane. I mean, just incredible. With some of these, we mentioned BlackRock, Michael Saylor, of course. I mean, he's just become this amazing apologist for Bitcoin just in the last, I think, 4 years, right? 3 or 4 years. He's kind of a Johnny-come-lately who's mastered it brilliantly. But analysts are predicting that Bitcoin's price is about to go through the roof. You and I were kind of talking off platform here, and you were giving me a sense that we might be seeing something akin to Elon's rockets. Are we about to see a price explosion here?
There are so many positive catalysts that I don't want to bore your listeners, but I'm going to list a couple of the major ones. We are pre-crypto regulation, pre-National Bitcoin Reserve, pre-pro SEC chairman. So right now we're dealing with Gary Gensler, who coincidentally or not resigns the same day Donald Trump steps into office. So that's going to be a massive day for a lot of reasons. But you brought up something important, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed it. When it comes to the National Reserve for Bitcoin, the reason that is so important is because it sets the standard globally for not only other governments, but other central banks and financial institutions to use Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation. Yeah. Everybody, whether you're 55, 85, or 25, has felt the effects of the infinite printing since 2020. And I'm sure you're aware of this stat, but I'd love to double it down for our listeners. 60% of all US dollars in circulation today were printed post 2019. That tells you everything you need to know. Things are more expensive than ever. And lucky for us as Bitcoin and broader crypto investors overall, that is working in our favor. Last quick comment here. It has been less than 12 months since we saw a Bitcoin spot ETF approved in the United States. Since that time, we witnessed the price go from $43,000 upwards of $108,000 at the peak of the market. I believe we're entering an even more bullish era with the launch of this National Reserve, as well as crypto tax policies becoming pro-crypto.
And it seems to have really stabilized in the 90s at this point, right? Like just before 90,000. So, which again is, like you said, that's 2x what that's 200% more than what it was just a year ago, if I recall. Am I getting my figures right? You'll know this off the top of your head.
Of course, your figures are accurate as usual. And you know what's really interesting is that I think your listeners may appreciate some of this data as well. There is currently a bill called SOB 121 that was already passed through the House. And what's so important about this is that bill requires banks to hold digital assets as a liability on their balance sheets. And you had referenced this earlier in the episode. I'd love to double down on that right now because President Trump is expected to issue several executive orders related to crypto policy. And it appears this is the number one issue that is going to be dealt with on January 21st.
Which means again, we don't know. I don't know. I can't give financial advice, obviously. But if you want to possibly ride a wave here, you got 6 days.
There's a tsunami on the horizon. I'll say that much.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's happening so fast. This is even beyond the Senate bill that's out there to create the crypto reserve. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah, we got 100 days, no big deal, because it'll take some time to make its way through the Senate. And then I read today, no, he's going to be he's coming out of the gate running on Bitcoin and on crypto. It's he's making it clear a new age is really happening. It's really dawning on January the 20th. It's pretty astonishing. I was curious your take on the notion of other countries getting involved. Of course, Nayib Bukele has been rocking it down in El Salvador. But I'm hearing China now is starting to reconsider particularly Bitcoin and crypto and so forth. What's the geopolitical significance here of crypto?
You know, what's interesting is that right now, China has actually banned the mining of Bitcoin, yet they are still responsible for 51% of all Bitcoin being mined today. So regardless of the sanctions that they apply on themselves, it appears there's some rule breakers within those countries' borders. And as I look at what it does for other countries around the world, the main difference is, and you'll understand and appreciate this more than anyone else, is that when we look at where the digital asset space is today, the majority of this space is unregulated. We are moving into an era where the majority of these assets, they're not only regulated, but they're being endorsed by large financial institutions. So there's 3 countries around the world right now that lead when it comes to Bitcoin holdings. Number 1 is the United States. We currently hold over 200,000 units of Bitcoin that has been confiscated by cyber criminals, for lack of a better word. The number 2 spot is China, with 19,000 Bitcoin currently sitting at their government. And the 3rd spot, which is only a couple thousand Bitcoin here, it is London. But why is that relevant? Because London is one of the largest financial sectors on the planet. So it's no coincidence to me at all that we've got the United States, China, and London already having these assets on their balance sheets, which is very interesting.
Wow. Well, do you see more coming in? I mean, obviously the Bitcoin conference was in Abu Dhabi. Do you see the Emirates coming in? Do you see, I mean, how does it, one of the things I read a while back, and I'm just riffing here with it because I'm sorry, I geek out whenever you crypto guys come on. I just love it. It's just but if I recall, even in the Middle East, there is some Islamic strictures that the currency has to be connected to gold or some kind of actual commodity. But yet they're even playing around with that a little bit, and they have some Bitcoin, so forth, that is connected with gold. Do you have any information on that?
I do. So what I think is interesting is a lot of people get confused, right? They start with Bitcoin and they think that all of these digital assets have the same use cases and the same underlying technology. That's actually not the case. Some of these assets are directly correlated to the value of a gold or a silver or some underlying asset as well. And we can go through this later in the show if you'd find it valuable. But the real evolution here, the real purpose of blockchain is to give people more access to their own money. We need to stop lending out our money and giving control of the money to the banks. And we can focus on that if you'd like, or I can go into use cases, totally up to you.
It's so neat because that actually leads me right to my next question. Is I'm just curious what you see really as the true value of Bitcoin, in particular, crypto in general, because I think a lot of people misunderstand just the civilizational significance of crypto. I mean, I was talking with someone granted they were a bit older, but it's not money. It's not real money. You know, they just don't quite understand. For me, the key that I've been fascinated by, and I see this theme coming back over and over again, is how it involves the separation between finance and state, which goes right along with your idea of the evolution of finance, where states can no longer use currency as a weapon for their own political ends. This is talk about empowering the people. It's beyond anything. What do you see as crypto's sort of true value, and why more and more of the worldwide population is being so attracted to it?
You know what I find really interesting about your response is you started off this video with Elizabeth Warren. And for any of your listeners who are new to this space, she is the largest crypto contrarian inside the United States. And I do want to give a shout out to my friend John Deaton, who ran as a Republican candidate against Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. Now, obviously, he lost. We can debate how that took place. But the reality is that I believe it's 70% of all people in the House today have pro-crypto policies. So we're already in this next era for digital assets. And you asked me where I think this asset class is going. I'll make it very simple for your listeners. The tokenization of everything is already underway. And there are plenty of blockchains that I focus on my show in particular, which is HBAR, XRP, XLM, to give your listeners a couple. For the record, I am not sponsored by those projects. These are just projects that I love the technology. But when I look at the tokenization of financial assets, we're talking about every stock, every bond, US treasuries. The use cases are essentially limitless. And it actually gives the holders like BlackRock, for example, more control of these assets. So there's incentive for us because we'll profit, and there's incentive for BlackRock because they gain control.
Wow. And it just fits in with the eventual rise of Web 3.0, right? And blockchain replacing everything else, so that ownership ends up becoming the key characteristic, as opposed to just being able to post or something akin to that. I noted too, the Brentwood economic system, particularly after World War II, that more or less financed globalization around the world. It seems to me there's two finances that really do get around the Bretton Woods system and the weaponization that can be used. Historically, gold on the one hand, since it got kicked out of that system, and crypto on the other, which I geek out on, because scholars are talking about like the future is supposed to be archeo future. So we're going back to tradition while at the same time just going gung-ho on technology. So the more technological we become, the more traditionalist we end up becoming. The more traditionalist, the more technological. So it's more like Star Wars than Star Trek. Star Wars, very mystical, and so forth. Where Star Trek, it's just purely secular and the like. But it does seem that this archeo future, the way you're saying it, it's financially, it's almost already here. We're kind of breaking out of this old industrialized Bretton Woods system, and what crypto really represents the finance of the future that's come forward into time and is realized right now.
And we actually have the opportunity to front run the big money, the large pools of capital, for the first time ever. If this was the internet bubble, we'd be looking at the projects that were being built and trying to chase the large institutions. Now it's the other way around. A lot of these technologies are underutilized for the time being, and we're yet to enter the era where digital assets are being used for their true use cases. So if I could highlight this and make it very clear, you are still early. If this is your first time hearing about cryptocurrency, there's plenty of opportunity in 2025.
Yeah. Now, that leads me perfect to what I wanted to ask you. So I get a lot of our listeners, as we have our listeners getting into crypto. That is happening. I'm really excited for them. Me too. It's in the last 2 years, I've been geeking. I told you before the interview, I used my first Bitcoin ATM successfully the other day. I was so pumped. I was like, this is great. In a local liquor store. I said, hey, I'm just going to throw in a couple of bucks and boom, it happened. It was amazing. So for our listeners out there who would love to get in on the action, but they're a little intimidated, the technology behind it, they've never done it before. They've never done anything with Bitcoin or crypto. Abdullah, give us a little bit of a few action items anyone could take right now to start wading into getting involved here.
First thing I'd like to do is just tell people why Bitcoin is here to stay. Bitcoin is a finite asset. There's 21 million Bitcoin. There'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin, right? Even with gold, we consider it a finite asset. That is because we are required by law to not mine more than 2% of circulating supply per year. I believe I'm correct on that, Dr. Charlie, right? Just to validate. So
I don't know the answer to it, but I'm going to defer to you for sure.
Since I'm the one saying it, I'll give myself that validation, right? So the reason that Bitcoin is going to go up forever is because we're infinitely printing money. I highlighted this earlier. 60% of all US dollars in circulation entered the market after 2019. There's a reason that the 1 percenters in America, their average salary went from $440,000 to over $735,000 in only 4 years. That is not because they became more valuable. That is because the money became less valuable. Now, how can that work in our favor? Many of these emerging asset classes, like our parents, for example, what they were told is that they could buy a house for $10,000. And that house, because it's in the American market and it's a priority, it will increase in value. Well, Bitcoin is that new priority, that new gold standard for this emerging asset class. So your question was, Where can people go to learn more about this technology? First of all, I guess I'll plug my show. Good Morning Crypto is the place to learn about these digital assets. And we're going to dive into a lot more topics besides Bitcoin. We're going to try to make our listeners aware of the emerging financial system and how this extends to every single angle and every single aspect of our economy today will inevitably be impacted by blockchain. But there's a couple simple steps you can take. First of all, figure out what Bitcoin is. Are you an American citizen or do you live outside the United States? It is extremely simple as an American citizen to register for a Coinbase account or an Uphold or any exchange and get a little bit of exposure. I also like to promote the idea that nobody gets rich overnight. And I've been in this asset class for the better half of a decade. I entered in late 2019, and I had this perception that, in 2021, I was become a Bitcoin millionaire, right? For lack of a better term. Patience is the name of the game here. Building these portfolios in a bear market and putting in $25 every Friday, $100, whatever the number is for yourself. That is how you gain wealth in this space. There's no shortcuts, and crypto is no different. But just to give you a quick synopsis, I would look into the technologies, I would sign up for an exchange, and I would create a plan for yourself. Are you holding these assets for 10 years? Are you holding these assets for 2 years? Do you have the goal of making $10,000 or do you have the goal of making $100,000? These are going to require different mindsets and different plans. And again, our show is a great place to interact with like-minded individuals where we discuss these topics every day.
Yeah, that's what I love. And I love following your X feed as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it just helps, it is, it's intimidating at first for people. It's, I guess in many ways it's like, when the internet first came on or email first came on, everyone's like, how does it work? Or, what do I do? What if somebody sees my letter when I send it? There's just so much uncertainty. Now we don't even think twice about it. And I think something like that is starting to happen with crypto. I do through Coinbase. I couldn't agree with you more on that. For me, that was the easiest one, just on my phone. Just download the app and boom, you're good to go. I mean, you link up your bank account. You just start buying crypto, whatever you want to do there. And I love the way you stay so informed on these topics and help us better understand this very mysterious world for a lot of people, but also an incredibly exciting world, and one that's changing and that's growing by leaps and bounds so fast. And boy, in 6 days, man, everything. I mean, we thought this was fun. We've been in many ways kind of hunkered down over the last 4 years. Now it's like breathe the fresh air of freedom, as Gandalf would say.
I love that. And you know what? I want to actually use a use case as an example for your listeners who may not understand what is the utility behind some of this technology. Well, right now, you talked about the Bretton Woods standard in modern day banking. Right now, there is a monopoly in America, and that monopoly is the banking system. Whether you'd like to send money internationally or you'd like to receive a pay stub from your workplace, you have to go through the banks. That is where crypto changes the entire system. Because for the first time ever, guys like me and you have the ability to not only control our assets, but send and receive those assets without permission. We do not have to ask JP Morgan. We do not have to go to Bank of America. And let me give you another example of this. There's a company, Ripple, out there that leverages the XRP ledger. And they have a great analogy that they often use during their presentations, where they talk about how if you're going to send $1 million from New York to London today, the fastest way to do that is to get on a plane with $1 million in cash and fly it across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's true.
And this is where blockchain solves that problem. Now, not only do you have to go through the traditional banks, you can say, JP Morgan, I'm not even going to talk to you about this transaction. Instead, I'm going to send that money directly from my account to Dr. Turley's account in London for almost no charge and instantaneously. Whereas in the traditional system right now, we have about a 7% fail rate on transactions, and it can take 3 to 7 days to send money international. So long story short, crypto will make money move like data moves on the internet today.
That's brilliant. That is so brilliant. Yes, it's like, right, we bypass the banks like texting and email bypasses the post office.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's brilliant, Abdullah. I mean, to have and just think of the possibility of wealth creation when money can move that way. It's stunning. I'm curious, before we close, Saylor talks about, in terms of the golden age, he talks a lot about how, yes, we're the reserve currency of the world, But with Bitcoin, and particularly this upcoming Bitcoin reserve, we can end up becoming sort of the asset owners of the world. Have you looked into the so we have our money, we have currency, but then we're also looking for long store values of investment to be able to keep our money and grow our money. The United States has more or less a monopoly on the former, but not necessarily the latter. We're the world's reserve currency, but people, the world is investing in all kinds of long-term stores of value. But with Bitcoin, if we get ahead of the game there, all of a sudden the United States can be the number one, the king in both reserve currency and in terms of investments. What's your thoughts on that?
You know what I love about that narrative is I think Donald Trump kind of took advantage of this earlier in his campaign, is that this market is $3.5 trillion. Only 24 months ago, this market was $800 billion in value.
Whoa, say that again, dude. That is nuts. Say that one more time. So right now it's 3 trillion.
Yep. Right now, 3.5 trillion on January 14th, 2025. In the summer of 2022, this was an $800 billion market. So it just goes to show how quickly things can change. And what I think Donald Trump has taken advantage of here is that if this market is about to go from $3.5 trillion to $10 trillion, which is what the analysts are estimating here, why not let Americans profit off of that growth? Why would we not incentivize Americans to take advantage of this emerging technology class and not only gain wealth, but dominate and create the future of finance within our borders? I'm a big proponent of the American dream. And this is something that I've become a lot more in tune with as I get older, is that America is still the greatest country on the planet, but we have to work to maintain that. We can't allow our global competitors to take advantage of something that is as important as our new financial system. So it's either us or it's our competitors. And I think Donald Trump understands it's better for everybody if the United States citizens are the one who get that wealth.
Abdullah Nassif of Good Morning Crypto, an amazing podcast you're going to have to avail yourself of. You're going to love it. Click on the link below to subscribe to what they're doing there. And then check them out on X as well, on all over social media. This is amazing stuff, gang. This is the wave of the future. It's here, as Abdullah is pointing out to us. The future is now. It's actually happening now. And this is part of a new golden era, and we're on the forefront of it, and it's absolutely amazing stuff. Let's have you back, because I mean, I could talk to you for hours, dude. This is so awesome.
I would love to come back, and I just want to say thanks again. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and it's been so interesting. As the show has grown, I've become in touch with much more like-minded individuals like yourself. There's nothing I'd rather do than sit down and have a conversation, so that sounds amazing, and thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure. We'll have you back real soon, Abdullah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gang, obviously Americans are tired and frustrated by a stalling economy, inflation, endless wars, and the relentless assault on our values. But thankfully, there are companies like Patriot Mobile that still believe in America and our Constitution. I'm proud to partner with Patriot Mobile because they're on the front lines fighting for the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, and our military and first responder heroes. Take a stand for conservative causes and put America first by switching to Patriot Mobile today. You'll get the same nationwide coverage as the big providers because Patriot Mobile operates across all 3 major networks. Plus, they back their service with a coverage guarantee. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team will find the best plan for your needs. Keep your phone number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Go to patriotmobile.com/TurleyTalks or call them at 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT. Right now, get a free month, a whole free month when you use the offer code TurleyTalks. Don't forget that. Use TurleyTalks. You get a free month. Don't get fooled by other providers pretending to share your values or have the same coverage. They don't and they can't. Join me. Switch to America's only Christian conservative mobile provider, Patriot Mobile.